I'm at the European Climate Adaptation Conference. I'm joined by Stefan Sobolowski from the Norwegian Research Centre and the Berkeley Centre for Climate Research. Stefan, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure being here.
You're also project coordinator of the Impetus4Change project. So I wanted to start off by asking you, how is Impetus4Change working to improve the accessibility and usability of near-term climate information?
So we are pursuing this goal through a number of pathways. Because the accessibility and usability of the information isn't just relevant for, say, urban planners or practitioners on the ground. It's also relevant for scientists and researchers who are utilizing the outputs from, for example, coordinated model into comparison projects and coordinated regional downscaling experiments. So we have one pathway that is very technically focused, and that is working through the European Open Science Cloud to make available tools and resources so that the data that are supplied in very technical formats are easy to access and easy to utilize and easy to analyze. And that's mainly targeted towards what I would call kind of expert users. Then the other pathway we are taking is to work very, very closely with our stakeholder groups in our so-called demonstrator cities to come up with methods to provide them with the information they need by identifying new climate hazards and new climate hazard indices, and to provide these in data formats that are usable, accessible, and easily interpretable.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what innovative approaches are you using to downscale those climate predictions?
So I would say the most innovative thing we are doing is developing machine learning downscaling tools that will allow us to greatly expand the range of possible outcomes and near future climate. And this is especially useful for assessing extreme events, and especially when we think of things like cascading events, compound events, or sequential events. And this is really a game changer when it comes to downscaling to local scales, because in the past we've been very limited at these very high spatial resolutions of a, say, urban area by computer costs or computational costs.
Okay. So can you give me an example of you talked about those sort of compound or cascading impacts. Can you give me, say, an example of one and how in that scenario your work would benefit people on the ground, so to speak?
I'll take an example I've been using for a few years now, actually, that occurred in Norway a number of years ago. There was a extreme storm, which it was late summer, August, an extreme storm that impacted the southern part of the country called Storm Hans. And it was very well forecasted, knew what was coming, preparedness was good. It still did a lot of damage, and it really illustrated how the infrastructure in Norway wasn't really ready for these very large climate change enhanced extreme events. 2 weeks after that, with river levels already running high, with the soil moisture completely saturated, so the system had no buffer left in it. A series of very slow-moving, disorganized convective cells moved across the country and set records for hourly rainfall totals in a number of areas. And that actually caused more damage than this well-predicted, well-organized storm itself.
Okay, all right. So in that scenario, your data would have enabled people to better prepare for that second event.
We can at least assess the likelihood of those types of events occurring now with these new tools that we're developing. So I wouldn't want to go so far as to say that we would get all the way to enhancing preparedness, but we can at least assess the likelihood of these kinds of events happening, and that wasn't possible before.
Okay, so something that you're developing is what you call adaptation support packs, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
So this is that second pathway towards usability that I referred to. And so we work very closely with our demonstrator cities and practitioners in those cities. It could be different departments, depending. So, for example, Barcelona is very concerned with heat waves and with the health effects of heat waves. So we're working with their health services. In Bergen, it's all about water. So we're working with the water and drainage department there and with engineers. And so the adaptation support packs are being developed through a series of events that we call Adaptalabs. They're sort of like hackathon for city planners and other concerned parties like consultancies. And in that, we try to identify their needs, their responsibilities, their working landscape and environment. So what are the regulatory structures that they have to follow, for example? And so the adaptation support packs are going to be quite bespoke and quite tailored to the individual locations in which they're being developed.
Okay, so if they're quite tailored to individual locations, sort of thinking about the legacy beyond the project, how will they be translatable to other regions, other stakeholders?
Right. So we made a strategic decision at the beginning of the project to work very, very closely and very deeply with a few cities, and then we have as one of our final deliverables to upscale what we've learned from that process into a roadmap for developing actionable climate services from this information that will be useful in a broader range of locations.
Okay.
And I think especially an aim is to provide guidance and a guidebook almost for locations that aren't as well resourced necessarily as some of the cities that we're working in. Let's be honest, Barcelona, Paris, Bergen, maybe Prague less so, but those are all very well-resourced cities that put a lot of resources into climate adaptation and have been working very closely with their scientific colleagues for a long period of time. And so we want to be able to branch out and get to other locations that maybe don't have that kind of access yet.
All right, yeah. And obviously something that comes to mind is you're dealing with very complex concepts, topics. You're communicating those to people who are perhaps non-technical experts. I'm thinking that in a city like Barcelona, the city officials are probably going to be quite well educated on these topics, but in other areas, not so much. How do you approach that challenge of communicating these complex topics to non-technical profiles?
It's a challenge, for sure. And it takes time. I think the main thing, and I'll be talking about this in a panel discussion tomorrow, is patience. Patience from all of the actors who are involved. We all have our different expertise areas, and it takes time to communicate both the limitations, but also the usefulness of this kind of information. Likewise, it takes time for the knowledge brokers or scientists to understand the operating conditions of the practitioners that they're working with. And so I think, the main thing is being very clear and being very honest about what the data we produce or the information we produce, what its limitations are, why those limitations exist, and not being afraid to say, we don't know, when that's really the answer.
Right, yeah, which is something that researchers really struggle with, I think, sometimes. Yeah, and that communication is a challenge. All right, so we've covered quite a lot of topics here. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the project?
So one thing that has really come through in this project that is something I'm really pleased with as a coordinator is we worked very hard in putting the project together to keep people out of their disciplinary silos. So this project is very large. It extends from fundamental science and improving global models for the climate predictions to these new downscaling techniques, to creating seamless climate predictions, all the way down to, for example, working with practitioners to better understand how flooding and extreme rain might affect storm drain dimensioning. So it's an incredibly broad range. And then, I forgot to add also like the social sciences aspect, which is related to perceptions of various extreme events and approaches to adaptation. And so the way that this project has worked, the people in this project have worked together, has been really inspiring to me. And working across these disciplines, because we all have different vocabularies and different jargons. And everyone's really approached this with an open mind and a willingness to collaborate. And that's kind of an extra thing that you don't know going in if that's going to work out.
No, obviously, no, of course, it must be a bit of a lottery depending on who you end up working with, right? All right. Thank you so much, Stefan. It's really great to end on that positive note, and it's fantastic to hear about the work that you're doing in Impetus4Change.
Thank
you for your time.
It's a pleasure. Cheers.